to the show, everybody. This is the Shankly Sessions, the Liverpool podcast we bring you each and every week on the upper tier out there on YouTube. If you could head out there, smash that subscribe and bell notification button, and also drop a like on the video. We would really appreciate your support. Dino is in the comments already. This team is done. Absolutely, Dino. No doubt about it. We've been talking about it all summer. The result yesterday, although it was very, very disappointing against one of our key biggest rivals down through the years and stuff like that. It wasn't unexpected. It wasn't a shock to me. I've been talking about the things that unfolded yesterday. I've been talking about them in previous shows all summer. I've been talking about the need for the midfield to be changed and strengthened, and that midfield is basically done, and that the key elements in it that we kind of like tend to be injury prone or aged. And it's really, really frustrating to see how we've sat back as a club and let this whole situation evolve and let it do whatever it wants to do, really, you know what I mean, by handing out more contracts. And, there's a certain amount of loyalty, of course, you have to show in football. But that loyalty, when it becomes sentiment as well, is really, really worrying, and it tends to come back and bite you. If you look at history and you look at the clubs that have been really successful in the Premier League, there's a ruthlessness about them in terms of how they change their manpower, how they evolve, how they sign players. You look at City, for example, this summer. Raheem Sterling, gone. Zinchenko, gone. Jesus, gone. Not a problem. Go out there, get Alvarez, get Calvin Phillips, get Haaland. They just evolve, and that's how teams stay on top of things. That's how things are kept fresh, and that's how that ambition keeps on rolling. We can't sit back and have the luxury of thinking about this team that won the Premier League after 30 years. And before fans come at me about that, I spent all those 30 years chasing the Premier League. I'm a fan of Liverpool since 1979. So I know how that 30 years felt in the shadow of Arsenal, in the shadow of Man United, and in the shadow of Chelsea, where we sat back, where they signed the players that they wanted, and we had to settle for third and fourth choices. And that's come back to bite us, and it was fairly evident yesterday. When you look, first of all, there's so much to talk about yesterday, between the lineup, between the bench, and between the reaction after the game, between the reaction on field during the game. It just feels a little bit toxic and a little bit poisonous within the group. A lot of players on the pitch, rather than taking responsibility for what's going on, and these are senior players, instead of taking responsibility for what's going on, seem to want to point the finger, seem to want to move the blame, which is just not the Liverpool way, and it's not the way we should be. And I'm going to get into talking about Klopp's post-match reaction and stuff like that. And some of the stuff we've seen so far this season is absolutely crazy. Some of the stuff that's been come out and brought out and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So just, I suppose where do we begin? And we'll do player ratings and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, the player ratings have been kind of generous, because they could all just get a 0, to be honest. But if there was ever a picture that summed up the issues that are there at the moment, and there's obviously stuff going on in the background as well. There you see Keita being left out, and he's not even injured, which to me means he's probably on the way out. But if there was ever a picture that summed up the issues at Liverpool, I think this picture really tells a story. You've got our captain and our vice captain there, and arguably our third captain in the picture at the moment, all having a go off each other, all trying to figure out who's at fault. You've got Hendo there, who looks absolutely shell-shocked and perplexed. You've got Milner, who just absolutely lost it yesterday, and rightly so at times. You know, you look at Van Dijk there at the moment, who I think is beginning to live off um, this aura that the media has created about him. You look at Trent yesterday, who was actually starting to jog around the pitch like as if he's already arrived at the GOAT status and beginning to heavily believe this generational talent stuff. Very, very poor yesterday. In 2022, we started with a midfield that was nearly 90 years of age combined. In 2022, we started with a midfield that contains Jordan Henderson and James Milner. And I don't want to be disrespectful to either of these players because Hendo has been fantastic as a captain and James Milner has been fantastic as a servant of the club. But these guys now, and we have to be honest about it, Jordan Henderson and James Milner now, and it's tough to say it, are squad players. They're simply squad players. They're really not starters or potentially starters when we play some of the lower teams and stuff like that. But we can't start a midfield with Jordan Henderson and James Milner in the same midfield. I spoke about it. I've been on Stevie's show, Stevie Stubbs' channel, and all talking about it. If we start with Jordan Henderson and James Milner, we've got major, major problems. And I've spoke about it all summer in terms of that midfield and what needs to be done. I've spoken about the need for not one player, but 3 players need to come in. I've also said it that if we don't push the button this season on a midfielder, we're going to have to get 3 midfielders in next season. 2 of the boys in the picture that you see there are going to be another year on, which effectively means they're really, really done at that stage. And it's going to cause a real problem. How are we going to get 3 midfielders in? We're also looking now, if you look at the situation that we're in now, I would probably think at this stage that we're out of a title race 3 games in. And I know 3 games in is harsh, but looking at the way that we're playing at the moment, I think we're out of a title race. I think the reality is now we're in a top 4 race, and that top 4 race is going to be a very tough race when you think of Man City, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea. I know Chelsea the other day were beaten by Leeds and they looked really, really poor and stuff like that. But they're going to bring in more players. They're going to throw money at it and they're going to fix it and they're going to bring in more players and they're going to have a much stronger squad than us to see out the season. And look, we haven't even delved into European football yet. The Champions League hasn't even started. Can you imagine what this team is going to look like when European football kicks in? And I know people will turn around and go, but injuries and all this kind of thing. The reality is Thiago will come back. We will improve. And he'll be in there for 6 or 8 games and he'll be gone. The reality is Naby Keita will probably leave. He'll probably leave in this window. That's probably why he's been left out. The reality is, will we get someone in or will Klopp's stubbornness stop us getting someone in? The reality is, if we don't make top 4 this year, the unthinkable, will Jude Bellingham still come in on the strength of his relationship with Jordan Henderson? I doubt very much. Morning, Morris. Morning here for me. It's just after 8 a.m. for you guys. I think it's just after 1. I brought it forward a little bit because I'm heading to Universal today to have a bit of fun on my holiday here in Orlando and drown my sorrows from yesterday. Absolutely, Morris. Yeah, morning for me. 8 a.m. here. So good to have you on board, mate. But yeah, this was no surprise yesterday. This was coming. You know, we look at the Fulham game, and the excuses were, oh, a dry pitch. We look at the Palace game, and although we played somewhat better, this moment of madness by Darwin Núñez has cost us greatly. And it's just, you know, you look at it and the positivity of it is, oh, well, you know, a 10-man Liverpool, I've never seen them playing as good against an 11-man Palace. Is that really where we're at this stage? And then we go into this Man United game and we stroll onto the pitch again The wrong attitude, the wrong mentality, nowhere near where we should be. We looked not properly prepared. The selection was absolutely crazy. And we got what we deserved. And it could have been more. It could have been more. Jade's in. Hiya, Jade. How are you? Good to see you. Greetings from Orlando. I want FSG out. They're screwed. Just Klopp doesn't get backed. Wouldn't blame him if he was to walk. It's an interesting comment, Jade. I'm trying to figure out where this whole thing lies. Is it FSG is not giving them money? Because we know they have money. They've plenty of money. There's plenty of money at Liverpool. I mean, it's only 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago at this stage, maybe, we were pushing hard for Tchouaméni. So the money is there. The question is there a stubbornness within Klopp to hold out for that exact player? Like what's happened with Ten Hag with Frankie de Jong. Are we experiencing that with Jurgen Klopp as well, that he's holding out, he wants Jude Bellingham, doesn't really want others in, and is that the case? But the reality is, the team needs 3 or 4 signings, and bringing in Jude Bellingham, albeit it will improve the midfield, it won't improve the midfield to the point that we think Jude Bellingham is not going to be the saviour of Liverpool Football Club. And you see the issues on that pitch yesterday. All over the pitch yesterday was a disaster. From the back, from the goalkeeper, all the way through to the front line. It took Salah 65 minutes to get into the game. We looked better when Fabinho came on. We certainly looked better when Carvalho came on. But the reality is we were playing a Man United side that lost their first 2 games, that got slapped up last week by Brentford 4-0, and it could have been more. And it's just shocking to see that this is where we're at. Morris, time to move Trent higher up the pitch. I'm not too sure what they want to do there, Morris, but what they really need to figure out is what position is he going to play in instead of trying to get him playing in 3 positions. I think it's unfair to the lad, but I think yesterday even you could see the way he was jogging around. It just wasn't happening for him. You know what I mean? He just seems out of sorts and doesn't seem like he's not doing those overlap runs at the moment that he was doing and stuff like that. There was just a lack of energy around the whole pitch. There's so much money there, prize money. Morris, that's only the tip of the iceberg. The Nike deal, there was 150 million of a bonus that we received. You know, we won the 2 domestic cups. Like, there's so much. Jade, how can you justify 10 injuries 3 games in and not buy a midfielder? It's shambolic. The squad depth just isn't there. Jade, I've been beating that drum. Jade, I've been beating that drum before we even had 10 injuries that we needed to change the midfield. In the words of Ralph Rangnick, this midfield doesn't need a signing. This midfield needs open heart surgery. That's what it actually needs. Those 2 guys in the picture there, as much as we love them and as much as we're so thankful for what they've done for the club and stuff like that, you have to be ruthless. You have to be ruthless, and if you're not ruthless, it catches up on you. Morris back in here. Jude Bellingham. Bellingham isn't strong enough to save the midfield. You need a nasty bastard DM and a playmaker in the middle like a Basuma Neves. Morris, 100%. I said it already in the preview. We chased Basuma all last summer. We were willing to pay 50 million. We did the same with Tielemans, and both were available this summer for 50 million, probably combined. And we didn't push the button on either of them. How do we revert back and not chase the targets that we were chasing last year? And they promised us last year that this year we'd get a midfielder. We lost out on Tchouaméni and went to Real Madrid, and that was no surprise after the Champions League. But where's the Tchouaméni money? And I don't want people coming on telling me it's in the Darwin Núñez deal. It's not in the Darwin Núñez deal. We were in for Tchouaméni. It was big money, and that money is still there, and it should be spent. We have got, and I want to put this out there very clear, we have got 9 days to save our season. And if we don't bring in at least 2 midfielders, forget about it. We're in a top four race. We're not even in a title race or anything to do with anything near that at the moment. The Bad Elf is in. Welcome to the show, Bad Elf. Then there is also another fact that I'm not in charge of what we can spend. Jurgen Klopp. If Jurgen Klopp is not in charge of what he can spend, why did he sign a new contract? Surely to God, when he went in to negotiate the extension to his new contract, there had to be guarantees laid down there on the table that this is what would be made available for him. How is he not in charge of what we can spend? We were in for too many. We were on the verge of signing them. The money was there. It's nonsense. If we're not in charge of what we can spend, here's a graphic for you. I just want people to let this one sink in. Tell me, anyone in the comments or anyone viewing this video at the moment, do they see a problem with that graphic there? Just have a look at that graphic there. That graphic there tells us everything about Liverpool Football Club's predicament at the moment and why we find ourselves where we find ourselves at the moment. Darwin Núñez in, Fabio Carvalho in, Calvin Ramsey in, Mane gone, Neco Williams. Look at Neco Williams for Nottingham Forest at the moment. Absolutely tearing it up, and we let him go. Taki Minamino, Ben Davis, the hologram, and Divock Origi. And you're going to add Naby Keita to that now. They'll probably go for, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe 25 million or whatever it is, which means we'll have made another profit of 10 to 12 million in this window at a time where we needed massive investment in terms of bringing in midfielders and stuff like that and creating competition. I heard on the show last night, competition. Let's talk about competition. Mo Salah. Where's Mo Salah's competition? Mo Salah is picked week in, week out, has no competition at all, has been dropping ratings of 4s and 5s since the AFCON, and we have no competition for him. We've no alternative. It's absolutely shocking. It is absolutely shocking. Morris back in the comments again. Mane is some loss, 3 forwards out and 1 in. Yeah, and you know something, when I look at this graphic as well, I'm not even looking at the net spend. I don't care about the money because it's not my money. What I do look at there is I look at goals and I look at work rate. And if you look on this side of the graphic here, there's probably somewhere in the region of 35 to 40 goals. That guy on the left is not going to make up 35 or 40 goals. And certainly not in his first season adjusting to the Premier League. It's absolutely shocking. It's absolutely shocking, and I've been saying it all summer. Del Boy's in. What's the crack, Del Boy? I feel, Del Boy, like we have traded places here. Traded places here now. In terms of the Arsenal fan base and the Liverpool fan base, it's just absolutely shocking. I'm not Klopp out, not by any stretch yet, but it's bewildering some of the stuff he's coming out with. Del, you're giving me a hard time here, man. The only thing I'm happy about is the fact that I'm on holidays in Orlando and I can go away to a theme park with the kids and put all this behind me. I think Liverpool should go for Xhaka, Del. Do you know something? If Granit Xhaka came into this Liverpool side, and I'm putting this out there now, he will improve that Liverpool midfield. Tielemans improves that Liverpool midfield. Nico Barella greatly improves that Liverpool midfield. Like, there's so many players we could name. I could rattle off 10 midfielders at the moment now that improve this Liverpool field. And I don't mean to laugh about it, but it's just it's laughable where we find ourselves, you know. Bad Elf is back in at Del Boy Gunner TV. How long until Arteta out? You could be holding your breath, mate. I think they're going to deliver silverware this year. Not necessarily might be the title, but they'll be in around it. I'm expecting Arsenal to deliver at least a piece of silverware and a top 4 finish. And I don't think, I think they can see now, you know, what Mikel Arteta is trying to do and stuff like that. And they're playing really, really good football. And Saliba's in there now and stuff like that, you know. Top of the league at the moment, maximum points, scoring goals. Jesus looks the business, which we all knew he would. There will be a while before we see Arteta out. Yeah, it's just it's a tough one, you know, you're looking at the moment. Let's get into talking about the reaction after the game. because this is really interesting. Um, Eric Ten Hag, I wanted a different approach, a different attitude, and that is what they brought to the pitch. That's what makes me satisfied. It's only the start. We have to remain humble. We can play much better if we have a little bit more composure, give an extra pass. We can be much more dangerous. But first, we have to become a team. Yeah, and and you look at the week that Eric Ten Hag has had. People were questioning him. People were questioning David De Gea. People were questioning the whole team. And they were in a really, really bad place for the last 7 days after that Brentford performance. And he's managed to turn it around. He's managed in a week to solidify a team. They played really, really well yesterday. You could argue in the first 25 minutes of the game, they beat us at our own game. They were pressing us. We were making mistakes. We were giving the ball up cheap, and we couldn't string two passes together. It was horrible, you know. Let's look at Jurgen Klopp's reactions. He says his emotions. We lost. That says, I think everything about my expected emotions. That's it. Very disappointed about the result. He also came out and said that he thought we should have won the game. Now, I don't know what game Jurgen Klopp was watching yesterday, but in no case in point should Liverpool have won that game. As a matter of fact, Liverpool, where they got a little bit stronger, we did for about 15 minutes in the first half. Came out in the second half with the same attitude for the first 20 minutes. First 20 minutes. And then after that, we really, really, really struggled. And then once Fabinho came on and Carvalho came on, it changed up the game a little bit. We got a little bit of a foothold in the game. But again, we give it up so cheap, Klopp on the decision to start Fabinho on the bench. This is not the story of the game as well. It's just the decision for this game. I don't understand that. I don't understand if Fabinho is fit enough to be on the bench and fit enough to come on, why he's not fit enough to start and putting Jordan Henderson in the six. I just don't understand it. And then on whether there are issues that need to be fixed within the team, I realise now I didn't even see it, but I think the question is about an argument on the pitch or whatever, shouting at each other and these kind of things. We don't have any kind of issues. I have not any kind of issues in the team like this. That nobody is happy after you lose a game is completely normal. But this is not an explanation, not an excuse or whatever. It's all fine there in this department. This was not a reaction after a loss. This was a bunch of guys shouting at each other on the pitch during the game, not after a loss. It's all well and good to be not happy after a loss, but in game, to tear into each other. And again, I would bring up that graphic of the three boys absolutely going at it. Andy Robinson, I think, came out with a little bit of sensibility really about it. I believe sticking together is vital for Liverpool after Monday night's loss to Manchester United. 100%. But the key issues here are signings need to come in. We can't find solutions within the squad, especially with the level of injuries that we have. It's just not going to work. If you look at our predicament at the moment here on the table, here we are in the table, languishing in 16th. 2 points from 3 games with a -1 goal difference. And I would preface that by saying we've played Fulham, Crystal Palace, and Man United. We haven't played like Spurs, Chelsea, and Man City. This is who we have played, and we're languishing in 16th. Really, really poor. On Klopp, it's really, really concerning. Some of the commentary and the reactions that he's coming out with seem bewildering beyond the point of, are we watching the same football on the pitch at the same time? Is really, 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 really strange. Look at our next 5 fixtures. Our next 5 fixtures are Bournemouth at home, Newcastle at home, Everton away, Wolves at home, and Chelsea away. And I'd say by the time we get to play Chelsea, they'll have probably brought in Aubameyang and maybe Fofana and players like that and stuff like that. So that's going to be a really difficult game at the Bridge. Wolves, would we be confident we get something against Wolves at the moment? Not playing the way we're playing at the moment. A matter of fact, I'm even concerned about the Bournemouth game next week, playing the way that we're playing, walking around. We're playing a high line. We're not playing the press. and teams are just flicking balls over the top and letting players run onto them against us and stuff like that. It's the easiest game of football you'll see. And that high line does not work when you're that high line does not work when you're not playing the press properly. And the three guys up the front yesterday didn't play the press properly at all. Luis Diaz, even on our counter attacks and stuff like that, you look at Luis Diaz, ball played into him. Normally he'd be like lightning going up the wing with the ball to put it in and stuff like that. Kept on checking back in again, giving United a chance to reorganise and stuff like that. And we literally, our counter attack was just so slow yesterday, it was non-existent. Kept on screaming at the TV yesterday. Put the ball out wide, get it out to the guys, get it up the wing and stuff like that. And it was just so slow. Out to Luis Diaz, check back to Robbo, constantly doing this all the time. It was just so frustrating to watch. Couldn't believe how slow our counter-attack was and stuff like that. And even second to the ball on a lot of occasions, we couldn't pass the ball. You had Allison just kicking the ball all over the place. Balls that he didn't need to kick out of play, kicking out of play, not finding a player. It was just frustration across the whole team yesterday. Morris is back. Robbo was one of the better players last night. Absolutely. I mean, the one thing you'll say about Robbo is he'll always give you 100%. He's always out there 100%. He'll battle for everything and stuff like that. But the problem is, when you've got a team that's so disjointed and so playing so badly, can't pass the ball and stuff like that, like we were yesterday, it doesn't matter how much of 100% of effort you put in, you're just going to struggle, and that's the simple fact of the matter. The bad health is back. Some of the players look burned out. Fabinho, Robinson and Trent need a rest, and Verge and Salah need to wake up. 100%. Absolute 100%. The problem is at the moment, as you can see, if you take Fabinho out, you're putting Hendo in. If you take Robertson out, you're putting Tsimikas in. And Tsimikas yesterday, albeit he came on, really didn't change it up a whole lot. And even towards the latter stages of the game, in the last few minutes and stuff like that, heading balls out, giving Man United a corner and stuff like that, and all just didn't work. Robertson, the same. Yeah, Trent. I mean, if we take Trent out, who are we putting in there? We have to wait for Kanate or Matip to come back, or use Nat Phillips, and we'd have to push Gomez out there. Now, with Gomez going out there instead of Trent to give you any more confidence based on what we seen yesterday? Salah has literally dropped off the face of the earth since the AFCON. His form has been absolutely horrendous. But again, who do we put in there? If you're going to drop Salah, then you're going to have to push Harvey on. And it's probably our only option, unless you're going to take a punt on someone like Kate Gordon or something like that. I don't think that's an option. With Virgil, yeah, if we had Konate and we had Matt up there, maybe we could rest Virgil and put the two boys in, but we don't have them. So it's a real problem. I think where he's coming from the rest, Morris, is the fact that like last season, and I know the boys have had 6 weeks off and some stuff like that and all, but last season was such a tough season, 63 games and stuff like that. And they do really look burnt out. When you look at a lot of these players as well, a lot of these players at the moment, they're aged a year on and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And you have to take that into account as well. If you look at Virgil van Dijk, you nearly begin to believe that his legs are gone and that's why he doesn't move around. Look at that Sancho goal yesterday. You have Milner, 37 years of age, throwing his body on the line, and you've got Virgil van Dijk standing there looking at the ball, and you've got Trent jogging into the picture. Absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. David, how are you, mate? Greetings from Orlando. I wonder did Klopp underestimate the loss that would be felt when Mane moved on? I don't think he did, David. I think he understood the player that he was losing. It was absolutely massive, but I think Mane had just made his decision. It was time to move on. Obviously, there was stuff going on internally there. There was always that political battle going on between himself and himself and Salah. And it looks like, you know, the club somewhat disrespected him in terms of contract and stuff like that and all, and you could see why he wanted to move on. But certainly, Mane was the powerhouse up there. Mane was the workhorse. He was the guy that was always closing down and winning the ball back and stuff like that, and harassing defences and stuff like that. And the one thing I said when Mane moved on, as much as we'd miss his goals, the 12, 15, 16 goals, whatever it was, it's his work rate that we would miss. And his work rate was phenomenal. His work rate was probably the top work rate in the club at the time before he moved on. Bad Elf is back in. They played every game last season and had a shorter summer break. Absolutely, that's the point that I just made there. It's a huge amount of games and stuff like that. Sorry, Morris first. How are we, Morris? No sympathy for millionaires privileged to play football. City had a lot of games too. They did, and look, I don't disagree. Look at City pre-season. We went out and did an absolute number on them in the Community Shield. And they look jaded and they look leggy as well. I don't think it's a money thing. I think it's a psychological thing, and it's just sometimes your body hits a wall, and that's just it. And I think what happens is, if you look at our play yesterday, Morris, our play yesterday was so forced and so laboured, and we're having the second think stuff all the time. Simple stuff like passing and flowing and the movement of the ball and stuff like that has now become a very difficult process for this team. Whereas before it was very natural and very flowing. If you remember how quickly we used to hit the ball into midfield and hit the ball to the front men and stuff like that. Now that looks like it's taken up to maybe 4 or 5 extra passes and a hell of a lot more thinking. So it's not as natural and stuff like that. So it's mentally taxing on you as well as physically taxing on you. And I think that's a lot to do with it as well. It's just, we've just lost that rhythm that we had there. We lost. And obviously, Nunez missing the 3 games is obviously having a big effect on it as well. Because when we're slinging balls into the box, if we have Nunez in there, he gives us a much better option of creating that craziness within there and stuff like that, and potentially scoring goals as well. Whereas we're slinging balls into a box where you've got guys in there that are, 5'8", 5'9", and stuff like that. So that's bread and butter to the likes of Varane and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's just, frustrating. I know, yeah. And the Bad Elf City have better depth in their squad and can rotate. That's been the case. Bad Elf, that has been the case for the last 5 years. The last 5 years, if you look at City's bench would start in most of the top 6 teams. You take those players in there and you look at many of those players that do be on that bench. So looks like Gundogan and all. Gundogan gets into any of the top 6 teams as a starter. And that's been the case. Morrison goes back to recruiting, so and a lot of injuries, but not buying into third game tiredness. Yeah, I don't think it's the third game tiredness. I think what it is when things aren't going your way and things aren't going right, and you're not winning and you're not on your pomp and stuff like that, it's really, really difficult. And it's wearing and it's difficult in terms of even when you go into training can even be a little bit laboured. Like, if you look at your team Arsenal at the moment, are absolutely flying. They're having a great start to the season. They've won 3, they're scoring goals, they look really good. Those guys are rocking up into training now. They're really looking forward to it. They're running in the gate. I'm sure there's none of them showing up late for training. They're all dying to go in and train and probably staying back and doing extra work. And you can see the way the likes of Jesus and Zinchenko and Saliba coming back in has raised the profile of the squad and the work rate and stuff like that, which we mentioned a couple of shows back, that not only Jesus, it's not only the goals that he brings, but it's the lifting of the work rate of the players around him. If you look at Liverpool at the moment, went out, laboured through pre-season. Pre-season was absolutely shocking bar the City game in terms of effort and stuff like that. And you see those other games that were throwaway games. The Strasbourg game, why did we even bother? But it goes back to that as well. If you look at Liverpool at the moment, I'm sure there's not a Liverpool player at the moment smiling down at the training. I'd say it's laboured. It's absolutely tough. And it's probably not very enjoyable. And that's what we're seeing on the pitch at the moment. And that can develop its own tiredness as well. Not necessarily just the 3 games in, in terms of the recruitment, 100%. I've already spoken on that and stuff like that. And yeah, there is a lot of injuries. But if you look at the injuries that we have, the likes of Thiago, Ox, these are players who are regularly going to get injured this season. Thiago comes back. He's probably going to play about 5 or 6 games. He's probably going to be out injured again. Ox is probably going to come back in October. He'll probably play maybe some cup games. He might come on in a couple of the easier Champions League fixtures maybe and stuff like that. But he's going to get injured again. Joel Matip, who had a breakout season last season, played an awful lot of games, stuff like that, but was heavily managed through that process. With the use, obviously, we brought in Kanate and stuff like that, which helped because we could rotate and rest him. And I think that was the real key point there last year. But if you look at Joel Matip, you bring Joel Matip in and you want him to play 10 games straight, he's going to get injured and he's going to be out. So the problem is the injuries that are out at the moment, yeah, if they come back in, makes the team better. But in reality, it'll only make the team better for a certain amount of games before those guys get injured again because we know they're injury prone. But yeah, good point. Is it a confidence and rhythm issue? Confidence, absolutely, because we're used to going out onto the pitch with our chests out. We are Liverpool. This means more, and we're going to go out there, and you'll see by a lot of teams we were beaten. Just by our confidence and stuff like that and all, which is now shot. Rhythm is definitely an issue. I think we're still trying to play this 4-3-3. And I don't think that works in terms of when you have Nunes in the team. And I don't think we figured out yet what way to play when Nunes is in the team. If you look at it yesterday, you've kind of a similar thing as well because you've Luis Diaz on the left. But I don't think he doesn't really play that Mane role. You've got Bobby, who just had to drop deep so much yesterday in terms of picking up the ball. I think if you look at the first half yesterday, I think Bobby Firmino had, 3 or 4 touches, I think, which is shocking for his position. And a lot of them was where he was dropping deep, which leaves that gaping hole there, which doesn't help us either in our forward line. So a real struggle. So yeah, rhythm is something that's really, really important, and especially for Liverpool, it has been. When you think about the way we deploy the press, when you think about the way we deploy the high line, if you're not in sync with all those things and you don't have your rhythm, you've got a real problem. As I said, if you don't press the ball and you give the opposition the time to move the ball quickly and stuff like that, you're going to get caught out in that high line. We seen it yesterday with Rashford, how many times he was played through. I know Van Dijk covered up for it once or twice and stuff like that, but the reality is they could have been through a couple of times. And there was even a couple of times when Eriksen picked up the ball and stuff like that, and the pass was on and he didn't see it, and we could clearly see it and stuff like that, and we got away with it a couple of times as well. So yeah, that's an absolutely huge factor. Also, is the manager struggling to motivate this group? They have won everything. Yeah, but I suppose, yeah, I mean, maybe that's the case. I mean, I also mentioned, obviously, Van Dijk beginning to believe his own hype, everyone talking about this aura and stuff like that. Trent is the same, beginning to buy into this GOAT thing before he even arrives at this GOAT thing. And I think, yeah, I think there is a difficulty, but the way that you motivate a squad is by changing it up, by bringing in competition, by being ruthless, by not having sentiment, not worrying about loyalty and romance and stuff like that. We can't do this. This is where we fall down. We fall down. James Milner, another year contract. Jordan Henderson, another year contract, or whatever it is, 3-year contract. We're talking about Bobby Firmino now, how we have to sign him up again. Why? On the basis of what? We haven't seen anything from Bobby Firmino in literally 2 years, maybe longer. Why is there such an urgent to sign his contract? Naby Keita's fit, but isn't brought to the game and isn't used. And obviously is probably going out the door. Again, if you look at the players that we've lost, we haven't replaced them. We never replaced Gini Wijnaldum. Although we were promised midfielders, we haven't got them. And every year since we've won the Premier League, it's always been, next year we're going to do this, or next year we're going to do that and stuff like that. But I still make the argument that in the beginning of the summer, we had to chew on any money. Where is it? Why isn't it being spent? It's clear to see the changes that are needed there. Yeah, so that's where we lie at the moment. It's a real struggle at the moment. So let's get into some player ratings here, and let me know what you think, guys. I think I'm being generous, but that's just the way I am. Go full screen on this one so I can see it there. So we start off with Allison. I gave Allison a 3. The Rashford goal, which was a really good goal, and he took it really well. But I think normally on those one-on-ones, we expect a little bit more from Ali. I think his distribution yesterday was really, really poor. A lot of balls were kicked into touch. A lot of balls were kicked out needlessly, especially in the second half. And I seen in the closing stages, he picked up a ball, and instead of going straight up the middle with it, he kicked it just out of play. But there was just a nervousness about his play yesterday. Albeit he made 1 or 2 really good saves. The save around the corner was a really good one when the ball came through a number of bodies. But again, that's the expectation we should have for Alisson at this stage, Trent, I gave a 2 to. I just thought he was just out of sorts. We haven't seen the Trent Alexander of old for a number of games at this stage now. He's really, really struggled. He's not doing those overlapping runs with Salah, and what happens there with Salah and Elliott and Trent, they should be working as a unit up that side, and they're not working as a unit at all. We're not seeing the overlapping runs, and what we're seeing Salah being isolated and being marked out of a game by 3 players at times, and having to try and beat 3 players. And more often than not, they're going to take the ball off him, or they're going to box him in to the point where they force an error and stuff like that, and that takes him out of the game. If you look at Mo Salah yesterday, it took him at least 70 minutes before he was in the game, which is just unacceptable at this level. And especially for a player like Mo Salah, when you think about it, a year ago or less, we were talking about this guy being the best player on the planet. And now look at the drop-off. Absolutely massive. Gomez, I gave a 3 to. Again, yesterday getting turned a number of times and stuff like that, and just not being on it. And we spoke about Joe like this before, that sometimes mentally he just drifts in and out of games and just sometimes doesn't see things. Van Dijk, I gave a 3 to. Could have been probably lower. Looks well out of sorts. Doesn't look anything like the Van Dijk that we know. Should have been pressing down that Jadon Sancho. I have seen on him in a number of games when I'm looking at him, even on the tail end of last season, instead of going out to press the ball and stuff like that, he tends to stand off the player as if he's forcing the player to shoot a certain way into a position and hoping that Ali covers the save and stuff like that. And what we seen yesterday is he didn't even go and press that to force the issue. He didn't try and block it. Again, we seen Trent coming into the picture, just casually jogging in like it didn't matter. 37-year-old James Milner was the body on the ground, who absolutely slid in to stop the shot, to create the time to allow Van Dijk and Trent to go out and block Sancho for that shot that he scored from. But it didn't happen. The guys just stood idle. Robbo, I gave a 4 to. Bit of endeavour for him yesterday. He was really the only one that was really showing a lot of energy and stuff like that. But again, when you look at that midfield, Robbo really, to be progressive at this stage, really needs Carvalho there where Milner is. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be starting to buy Carvalho. This guy absolutely lit up the championship last year with Fulham. He was a major reason why Fulham won the championship last year, and he was a major reason for a lot of the goals that Mitrovic scored last year. And yet we seem to think that he's not ready to go in there and give us the creativity that we need, that our better option is to start with James Milner, and I just don't understand it. So Robbo got a 4. Henderson, I gave a 2 to. Absolutely no impact on the game at all. Didn't even look yesterday, wasn't even acting even as a captain. Milner was acting more like a captain than Henderson was. And they just made Scott McTominay and Christian Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes look like Prime Pirlo. And this is a team that was slapped up by Brentford 7 days ago, and they made them look like Prime Pirlo. Shocking. Harvey Elliott, I gave a 6 to. I thought Harvey Elliott was probably our best player on the day. Again, bringing the energy and moving the ball around. And until Carvalho came on, he was the only player progressing us in any way positive forward and stuff like that, playing some nice little passes and stuff like that. And once again, probably for the third game running, Harvey Elliott has probably been our man of the match. And that's a lot of players on that pitch there who should have a good look in the mirror that Harvey Elliott has been our man of the match probably for the 3 games. Absolutely shocking. Milner, I gave a 2 to. I know it's probably harsh. Maybe we could give him a 3. There was endeavour there and stuff like that. But the reality is we shouldn't find ourselves in a position where James Milner has to start against Man United 3 games into the season. So again, when we talk about player selection and stuff like that, pretty poor. And for the Jadon Sancho goal, he was the one who put his body on the line, while everyone else had plenty to say about it after the fact, but yet didn't impact on it and stuff like that. So Milner gets a 2. Salah gave a 3-2. Literally did nothing yesterday. Scored the goal, which we expect from him and stuff like that, but was isolated for most of the game. You know, made Malacia look like Maldini at every stage and stuff like that. Offered nothing, very difficult, couldn't find a player. Often having to check back in and put the ball back down the line. Very like Luis Diaz. Gave him a 3. Luis Diaz, I gave a 4-2, brought a little bit more energy and stuff like that. But again, moving up the line with the ball, and instead of running to the outside and trying to get a ball in there and stuff like that, kept on checking back in and having to give the ball back to Milner or back to Robbo or whatever it was, which halted the attack and gave United all the time in the world to sort themselves out and organise themselves in terms of what they were trying to do. Firmino, I gave a 3-2, probably being generous. Really had no impact on the game. Kept on dropping deep for the ball and stuff like that. As I said, in the first half, I think he had 3 or 4 touches, I think, or something like that. Was symptomatic of the whole team. But again, really, really poor. Those were the ratings. Obviously, I said Carvalho came on and brought a little bit of energy and stuff like that. But that was really it. David's back in the comments. Looking back on the highlights again just now, Alisson actually did really well with saves from Eriksen and Rashford in the second half. Yeah, no, he did. And I mentioned that. I mean, some of the saves that he made were decent and stuff like that, but his distribution was absolutely shocking. And even at times when we wanted to get the ball out a lot quicker and stuff like that, he struggled to release the ball quicker and was just kind of feeding the ball on the ground to Van Dijk or feeding the ball on the ground to Gomez instead of looking up and picking an option in midfield or stuff like that. And all his distribution was all over the place. The key save for me was the one, not too sure who took the shot. It might have been Rashford, but it came through the bodies in the box and he tipped it around the box, which I think was a really, really good save. But at his level, David, in terms of distribution and stuff like that, it has to be way better than that. We didn't see any of those crossfield balls, even from feeding the ball out to Van Dijk and Van Dijk taking those, distributing that ball out, the silence of those crossfield balls that we're used to seeing and stuff like that. Team was so disjointed and stuff like that. But yeah, as I said, he did make a couple of saves. And again, I said it might have been a little bit harsh on the ratings in terms of Alisson and stuff like that. But that's what I gave him. I thought it was a bad day at the office overall. So yeah, we move on to Bournemouth now next week. We will be dropping a preview for that during the week, which should be interesting. And we've literally got 9 days to save our season. So where do we go from here? At least 2 signings needed, and hopefully a couple of players may be back off injury. But we shall see what happens. Until next time, folks, thanks for being in the chat. If you could drop a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, obviously subscribe and like and share on the channel as we try to keep it growing. Let's try and see where we go from here now, Reds. Lots to think about. Lots to change, and let's see if he's willing to make the changes or maybe bring in a few players before the Bournemouth game. Until next time, Reds, a pleasure.